Guys, I've just built this amazing house. It's beautiful. It's amazing on the piece by piece tutorial world, and I'd like to show you the interior. Isn't it beautiful? No, it's not. Oh. Anyways, today we're going to fix that. So here's how you build interiors that are both functional and beautiful in Minecraft. Granted, I've chosen a rather small sample size, but after I finish this, I will actually be bringing you on the EchoCraft world so you can see how I've actually applied my logic to a real build with a much larger scale. So first, I want to get a basic idea of how to mesh functionality with beauty. First, I usually like to think, okay, I'm in this space, what functional things do I need in this space? So let's say this is my starter house. I need pretty much everything a starter house would need in here. So let's say we need a furnace, storage, so we need a chest. So I'm going to get myself a red bed. We need a crafting table. Just go through here, we need lighting, which I am going to right away get lighting out of the way and put it right there. Lighting should both be central and something to easily look past. Sometimes lighting is very important. Like if you have a very big chandelier, it should be the center of attention. But a lot of the times, lighting is just there. So keep that in mind as well. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch my chests to barrels because barrels are just objectively better. So here we go. We've got a basic idea of everything we need for this little build. Now we need to take this and we need to make it look nice. So the first thing I'm going to do is just try to think, okay, how do I want things oriented in here? How can I space things out? And I think this is actually pretty good. I'm going to actually rotate this bed. I'm going to take this crafting table and put it there and put the stone cutter there. Okay, so this is a pretty good start. Now, let's see what we can do design-wise. So the first thing I'm going to try doing is I'm going to turn this furnace into a little kitchen area. So I'm going to give some countertops. And then I'm actually going to grab both a furnace and smoker. So I'm going to turn the smoker into that, and I'm going to turn a couple of furnaces into the floor, right there. But then I'm going to take trapdoors and make this a little wall, so you have a little division between the kitchen floor. I'm actually gonna augment that slightly so it looks more like that. There we go. So now you've got a very easy divide as to where the kitchen should be. And let's say we'll have a spare chest right there and spruce up this area with a little bit of color. Oh, forgot you can do that. So there we go. So now you got the storage, which is all easily accessible, but you've also got a little bit of color there with the pot as well. Alright, so let's turn our attention to the other side of the room. I'm going to start with the stone cutter because the stone cutter is actually fairly simple. This is something I like doing a lot with stone cutters, and that's literally just making it look like it's being used. Alright, and so even though this looks like it's being used, we don't want to waste the space up here. So let's get another pot, maybe a head. Oh, and tell you what, now that we've made this space up here, we can actually fill it with another functional block. So let's actually put an anvil up here to make this space even more functional. There you go, that's helpful. And oh, tell you what, we've made this little table here. Why don't we make use of that as well? Make use of this pod area and put an azure bluette there, just for a little more decoration. But this bed just kind of feels out in the middle of nowhere now. So actually, yeah, this bed doesn't feel in place. So let's actually do that, and let's get signs that make the bed's placement feel a little more intentional. But now we've kind of got a bit of an empty space here, so let's get some red wool and red carpet perhaps. Now we've got a little bit of detail in this area. And just above this area, I'm going to take 2 item frames and say, oh, that was my first sword, and this was my first diamond. There you go. Now you got some more wall decoration. Now let's take a look at this window. This window's nice here, it does its job, but we could make it a little bit more accentuated. So let's get some banners. Let's say we get light gray banners. And there you go. Already that window is a lot more of a centerpiece. This is not the only way to make windows a centerpiece, but you know, just as an idea. Especially if you only have 1 or 2 windows or a handful of windows compared to how much surface area on the walls you have, you want to make those windows important. Now there's a little bit of a blank space up here, so I'm just going to fill it with a random painting. So now I have a painting up there, it kind of fills the space, not too over the top, but it does fill the space. All right. So there we go. I'm going to be honest in saying this is pretty darn good for a starter house. So let's just kind of get the vibe. You're out here, your starter house, maybe the sun is starting to set and you just want to go in and take a breather. Look at that. You come in immediately and you've got the view right at the other side. Both the light right in the middle and the window at the back draw your eyes straight forward so you see everything on either side. You've got on this side immediately all of your storage and utility so you can dump your items. And keep in mind these pots are now also useful for holding items. More item dumping, armor storage, and some decoration with it. And it looks like a nice little like storage closet space. It's very enclosed. On this side you've got all of your other utilities. You have a brewing stand, you have an anvil, you have a stone cutter, you have a crafting table, all in a little 3x3 space, as well as some decoration, some strategic placement of blocks that helps blend it in with where it is on the floor. This red carpet leads you all the way through, and then here you've got furnaces, a little kitchen area. It looks realistic, but it also looks like it is Minecraft. So you have the smoker here, you have the countertop, you have a chest which say maybe I put some raw beef in. There you go. That's where my food storage goes. Or maybe my coal as well. But it looks realistic because even though this is a different texture to the actual floor, it's contained both by the carpet and this little half wall here. So it's contained and it still looks in place. And on the opposite side of that, you've got where I sleep. You've got some wall decorations, nothing too over the top, but it looks contained. It looks like it's not just pieces of utility dotted across a mostly, you know, lifeless interior. Bunch of walls that are just that, they're just walls. You don't want walls and floors and ceilings to feel just like walls and floors and ceilings. You want them to be lived in, you want them to be used. And that is how you have to combine functionality with form. Especially with interiors, you have to make it lived in. They can't just be fully functional and they can't just be fully form unless you're a creative builder or you're just building something for funsies. Now let me take you to somewhere important. This is my EchoCraft base. And this may look familiar to a lot of you, maybe some of you it won't, and if it doesn't, subscribe because you can see a lot more of it going forward, and check out my earlier episodes. But this is the first structure I built in this entire base. Now it is a rather large base at the moment, as you can see, and it's getting expanded upon even farther. But this was all it started out with. And at first, as you can see, it is pretty large. It's pretty, well, it would be pretty open if it didn't have all of these details in it. So the first thing I knew is that I wanted this to be my storage area. So I've got lots of chests and barrels. It is fully practical. But you also realize that not only are they put in a way that makes it look like it's just a bunch of shelving units, it's also split up. I have some stuff stored over there and more stuff stored over here. That way I can make more space used with the same functionality. I could have crammed all of these boxes and stuff up against this wall entirely, but then, you know, what would I have done with this with this little area. And this area would feel too overcrowded. So I split it up. The other thing I knew is that if I didn't have this table in here and this carpet, this middle bit would feel empty, lifeless. So I added the table with my jukebox in it, with all of my music discs and some decorations on it. I added the carpet around it. And here, these two areas felt completely lifeless. So I added some decorative armor. I added the stonecutter area, which, as you can see, I used the same trick on to make it look like there's little rocks that have been cut next to the stonecutter. Here I just made a little random table with a little random piece of bamboo, but it fills the space, it gives it life. Back here I put a loom, which does have a little bit of utility, but it doesn't serve much more purpose than, being there, filling the space. You can fill the space if you just have a gap, but fill it with something utilitarian. I say that, but this is completely decorative. I don't use this at all. It's just normal books. There are some cases in which you can just make things to look good. But all of this, entirely utilitarian. But I put it on 2 levels. I made it look visually interesting with the shaping of, the little, loft area. In here, this is entirely utilitarian. Literally all this is a honeycomb farm. But I gave me a view of the bees. I added some decorations on the side. I added some leaves on the top to make it interesting. Now let's take a look at something that is a little bit less utilitarian and a little bit more decorative. My throne room. This throne room has almost zero purpose other than housing this beacon, which is actually the facade for the beacon under here. As you can see, you can't be unafraid to also not use space that you're not going to use. There is a lot of unused space below my builds. But I walk in here and the first thing you see is this beacon pointing your eyes up. You got armor stands up there. You have layers of depth upon another layer of depth upon another layer of depth upon another layer of depth upon the sky. Your eyes are drawn away from the vastly empty walls, which, even though they do have windows, are not fully accentuated because there's a lot of windows. It would be cluttered. Now the walls do have decorations upon them. I have a large painting there. I have some mob heads. I have some player heads of all of the echoes, minus Sully, because I can't get a wandering trader for the life of me. These corners felt really empty, so I added some cool pots with them, with some extra color and some plant varieties. And of course in the middle we have the centerpiece. Centerpieces are very important because, again, it's where your eyes are drawn. You want your eyes to be drawn to something important. Does this serve a function? No. Does it look cool? Yes. Another great example of this is the library. The only purpose this entire library serves is this. That's it. Just the enchanting table. Now, granted, libraries are pretty easy to decorate. You just fill it with lots of books. You add some tables with some cool stuff on them. You make the ceiling look a little interesting with some support beams and, the roots of a giant tree sticking out at the top. But the important thing to know about this library is that if I got rid of these on either side, it would look super boring. Adding these rows of bookshelves on the sides breaks up your view and makes it a lot more interesting to look at. Now, here's an example of something of an interior I'm not overly proud of, mostly because I haven't needed to use this place very much. This is my arena, and while the outside is pretty simplistic because it's literally just supposed to be seating, underneath it's kind of lame. I've got some pots with some colors that break up the monotony, but these halls are largely empty and boring. Maybe someday I'll come back and add some more detail and make this look better. But this is one of the things you want to avoid. You don't want to look in a direction and see almost nothing. Like, I don't know where my eyes are supposed to be drawn to here. Not that the door is kind of boring to those. That's just like random stuff. The light, that's not super interesting. My eyes are not drawn to anything. There's nothing here to look at. So this is a bad example of what to do. And it's important because you also need to know what to avoid. And this is what to avoid. You're not looking at anything. I'm not looking at anything. What? It's just a wall. Yes, I can build interiors, but I'm not the master at it. And plus, this was kind of rushed, and it was, you know, lessons learned. But there are some times that you can't avoid a purely utilitarian interior, which are the times that you can embrace the utilitarianness of it. This is a villager trading hall. It is not incredibly entertaining on the inside because it is just rows upon rows of villagers for efficiency's sake, which is why I minimize how much interior there is. It's just a 2-block wide hallway all the way around. I've got some bookshelves here, I've got a little mini block, some lighting, but it's not meant to be pretty. Not all things have to be pretty. This is a little bit prettier because I figured I'd be spending a little bit more concentrated time here, curing villagers, getting good trades, and I have a little bit more space to work with. I made the ceiling particularly interesting. I added lots of color. I added shape to the walls. I added something on the floor to break up the very drab cobblestone. Added a little table with some plants. Stuff just like that. But probably the most important thing to know about interiors is that the space needs to be filled. You can't leave things empty. Because imagine if I looked here and saw nothing. This is boring. It sticks out like a sore thumb. Obviously this is a pretty extreme example, but that's so much better. This, imagine if I was missing all of this. It looks worse, doesn't it? That is kind of what you have to keep in mind. It doesn't always work. There are modern builds that I'm not particularly good at, so I don't want to comment too much on. But generally, when building in Minecraft, you want space to be filled. So that's my very short guide on how to do interiors. I'm not particularly good at interiors, so I wanted to make this short and just my little thoughts that I had here and there about them. But there are other better creators who are much better at interiors than me. But I hope the little bit of insight I had might have been found useful by someone. And if you think it was useful, please subscribe and go check out the rest of the Piece by Pizza building series. You might find some other tips in there helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.